I never imagined I'd be the woman telling a story like this. My name is Nora, I'm 34, and I completely destroyed my marriage chasing what I thought was a genius idea. Looking back, I'm stunned I actually believed Miles would go for it. But that's what happens when you start mistaking your fantasies for reality. Miles and I have been together for 8 years, 5 of those married. He was a steady one, reliable, hardworking. The kind of man who remembered my mom's birthday and always paid the bills on time. Not the most thrilling person, maybe, but he was mine. Safe, solid. Then there was Theo. I'd known him long before Miles came into the picture, and there had always been something between us. A tension, a flicker of possibility that never really faded. When Theo moved back to town about a year ago, we started hanging out again. Ironically, it was Miles who first suggested it. He thought it would be fun to grab drinks with him. Catch up. I remember watching them shake hands that night, both sizing the other up in that subtle, silent way men do. Miles was polite, of course, but I knew he sensed something. Over the next few months, we'd all hang out now and then, watching games, having casual dinners, backyard barbecues. Nothing major. But the moments I had with Theo during those gatherings started sticking with me. He'd make some offhand reference to our past, and I'd laugh harder than I should have. He'd reach past me in the kitchen and linger just a little too close. Nothing ever happened, not really, but the tension was always there, unspoken but thick in the air. And then I started thinking about Theo more often, comparing him to Miles, letting little daydreams play out in my head. I told myself it was harmless, just imagination. Everyone fantasizes now and then, right? But then I started being more secretive, keeping my phone close, setting an extra password, quickly closing Snapchat when Miles walked in. It wasn't like Theo and I were texting or anything, just playful messages, maybe a few too many. You up? Text late at night. Still, I knew I was crossing a line. Then came the idea, born from one too many wine coolers, an article about modern love. Some couples apparently don't pick between comfort and excitement. They are both. They add someone to their relationship, make it a trio. It even had a trendy name. I thought, why not? Why should I give up the stability I had with Miles or deny the thrill Theo gave me? Maybe I could have it all. I know what that sounds like. Selfish, naive, delusional, and maybe I was. But in my mind, it made perfect sense. Miles would still be my partner, my foundation. Theo would be an addition, like a bonus. Everyone would win. Miles was always rational. He'd hear me out. I figured we'd talk it through like adults. I'd even heard of someone else, Stacy's cousin, I think, who was doing something similar and seemed totally happy. At least her Instagram said so. So I started planning. I picked a Friday night, wore the black dress Miles liked best, cooked his favorite dinner, even opened a bottle of the good wine. Everything had to be perfect. I thought if I played it right, if I delivered the idea just right, he'd at least consider it. I didn't even let myself imagine he'd outright say no, let alone what he'd actually do. That night, I poured the wine and lit candles. The table looked lovely. I even did my makeup, rare for a Friday at home. Miles walked in, clearly surprised, and asked if there was a special occasion. Do I need a reason to do something nice? I said with a smile. He kissed my cheek and went to take a shower. As we sat down to eat, I let him talk about work. I nodded along, all while rehearsing the lines in my head for the 100th time. I had practiced this moment in the mirror, even tried different facial expressions. I needed to seem calm, open-minded, playful, not desperate. Finally, I reached across the table and took his hand. I've been thinking about us lately, I said. He paused, fork halfway to his mouth. That sounds serious. Not serious, I said quickly, just thinking about how to keep things exciting. His face softened. He probably thought I was going to suggest a weekend getaway or a new position in bed. If only. I've been reading about how couples sometimes, open things up, I said, not like dating other people separately, more like together. Miles put his fork down slowly. What are you saying exactly? And then I just said it. No more build-up. What would you think about inviting someone else into our relationship? Romantically? Silence. A long, deafening silence. You mean like a threesome? He asked, voice low. steady. Not exactly, I said. Well, maybe eventually, but not just that. I'm talking about a real relationship. The three of us. He took a slow drink of water, eyes on mine. Do you have someone in mind, or is this just hypothetical? My heart was pounding. Actually, yes. I was thinking maybe Theo. The way he froze told me I'd lost him, but I couldn't stop now. I kept talking, babbling, really, trying to sell it. He already knows both of us. We all get along. I think could be special. Are you sleeping with him? Miles asked, his voice dangerously quiet. No. God, no. I would never cheat on you. And technically I hadn't. We hadn't done anything physical. Just flirted, texted, imagined. But you want to, he said flatly. It's not about that, I said, lying. It's about exploring something new together. Miles stared at me a long time, then said he needed time to think. He went to bed early that night. I told myself that was a good sign. He didn't yell, didn't storm out. That had to count for something, right? The next morning, I tried to act normal. I curled up next to him in bed like everything was fine, but he turned to me and asked, calm and cold, "How long have you felt this way?" I should have denied the feelings I had for Theo. Instead, I kissed him and whispered something that wasn't really an answer at all. It doesn't change how I feel about you. But it did. Everything changed. The next day, Miles didn't come home after work. I tried calling him, straight to voicemail. I texted, no response. By midnight, panic had set in. I was calling nonstop, messaging his friends, even phoning his office. Nothing. It was like he vanished. I nearly called the police, but something in me knew exactly what had happened. He was deliberately not here. Not with me. Not with his wife, who had just asked if it would be okay to bring another man into their marriage. Around 3 a.m., my phone buzzed. Just one message. Need space. Safe. Don't call. 5 words. That's all I got after 8 years together. The next day passed in a haze of fury, fear, and confusion. How could he just disappear like that? What if something had happened to him? Was he ever coming back? Should I reach out to Theo? But even the idea of calling Theo felt wrong. It would make everything worse. By the 3rd day, still wearing the same pajamas and glued to the couch, I heard the key in the lock. I froze. Then Miles walked in. He looked wrecked, unshaven, red-eyed, still in the same clothes from when he left. He didn't sit next to me. He chose a chair across the room. That alone told me everything. Where have you been? I asked, trying to sound angry, like I was the one owed something. Driving, he said, his voice stayed. At a rest stop outside of town. You can't just vanish for days because of one conversation. One conversation? He let out a bitter laugh. Nora, you asked if your friend could join our marriage. After I've watched you two flirt for months. After you started hiding your phone, changing your passwords, finding excuses to bring him up every chance you got. Do you think I didn't notice? Nothing happened. I said quickly, nothing physical. But you wanted it to, he replied. Don't lie to me. I stared at my hands. I couldn't defend myself. It's complicated. No, it's not, he said, standing. I've had 3 days to think, and it's actually very simple. You have feelings for him, and you wanted me to say it's okay so you could act on them without feeling guilty. Hearing it said out loud made me feel sick. That's not true, I started, but he interrupted. One more question, he said, voice calm but final. Do you love him? I could have lied. I probably should have lied. But instead, I whispered, I love you both. He nodded slowly, like I confirmed something he already knew. Then he turned and walked to bedroom. I heard drawers opening, closet doors moving. When he came back, he had a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. What are you doing? My voice barely sounded like mine. I'm going to stay with my brother in Florida. I need to figure out what I want. Don't go. I begged, suddenly realizing just how far this had spiraled. We can fix this. We can forget it ever happened. That's the thing, he said, and his eyes were full of something worse than anger, sadness. We can't forget it. You can't unfeel what you feel for him. And I can't unhear what you said. As he opened the door, I blurted out, Remember what we promised before we got married? No cheating. No divorce. He paused. Funny how you remember the second rule, but forgot the first. I didn't cheat, I said, almost pleading. Didn't you? He replied quietly. Then he closed the door. I dropped to the floor, my phone in hand. On the screen, 50 unread texts to Miles and one new message from Theo. Hey, stranger, haven't heard from you. In a while, drink soon. I threw my phone across the room. The next 2 weeks were a blur. Miles only texted once just to say he'd arrived safely in Florida. I stopped going to work. I couldn't face anyone. I couldn't face myself. The house fell hollow, quiet. Everything echoed. I tried to convince myself I wasn't the villain here. I hadn't actually done anything. Feelings aren't betrayal. If anything, I try to handle things the right way, talking openly instead of sneaking around. That had to count for something, right? But even my sister didn't agree. When I tried explaining to her, she said gently, how would you feel if Miles asked to bring another woman into your marriage? That's different. I snapped, but I couldn't explain how. After 3 weeks of silence, I finally caved and messaged Theo. Hey, been dealing with some personal stuff, could use a friend. His reply hit like a slap. Heard you and Miles are having issues. Probably best if we don't hang out right now. Heard from who? My stomach twisted. Had Miles talked to him? Were our friends gossiping about us? I scrolled through Miles's Facebook. He hadn't posted, but the comments on old photos told the story. We're here for you. Sending love, heart emojis. Everyone had taken sides, and no one was on mine. I tried calling Amber, one of our couple friends. She answered, but her voice was distant. Yes, she'd heard. No, she didn't want to get involved. Yes, she'd spoken to Miles. No, she couldn't talk right now. It was like I'd been cut out of my own life. And Theo, the man I'd risked everything for, was backing away too. One night, alone with a glass of wine and frozen dinner, I broke. I texted Miles. I made a mistake. I miss you. Please come home. The next morning, I hated myself for it. Not because it wasn't true, I did miss him, but because it felt like I was giving in, like I was admitting guilt when I still didn't know if I was really guilty. No reply that day. Nothing. Then just as I was drifting off to sleep, my phone lit up. I miss you too, but I don't know how to come back from this. His words were a lifeline and a heartbreak all at once. He still cared, but he didn't know if we could survive this. I spent the next few days crafting the perfect response, something hopeful but not too desperate. I finally sent, we can work through anything together. What we have is worth fighting for. Nothing. Days passed. My sister brought groceries because I couldn't stand the idea of running into anyone at the store. Everyone probably knew. Everyone probably judged. I started to realize just how much of my life wasn't really mine. The house was filled with Miles's furniture, the walls with his family photos. Our friends? His friends, really. Our routines built around a schedule. Without Miles, who was I? And without Theo, who wasn't even returning my texts anymore? What was the point of any of this? The truth was brutal and undeniable. I had gambled everything on a dream, a possibility, a crush. And I had lost it all. A month after he left, Miles texted to say he was coming by to collect more of his things. My heart jumped. It felt like a lifeline. Maybe this was my chance to make things right. I spent the whole day preparing. I cleaned every corner of the house, made his favorite lasagna, even put on makeup for the first time in weeks. If he could just see me, remember us, maybe he'd reconsider. But the man who walked in that evening wasn't the same one who had left. He looked rested, leaner, like Florida suited him. He'd even gotten a haircut. You look good, I said, trying to sound casual, not desperate. Thanks, he replied, avoiding eye contact. I can't stay long. I made dinner, I said, motioning to the kitchen where the lasagna waited. I thought maybe we could talk. He paused, then sighed. Just dinner, okay? He said. We sat down at the dining table, two strangers with too much history. I poured him a glass of wine. He didn't touch it, and served the food, which he barely acknowledged. I tried to hold it together. I've been thinking. I began, ready with a speech I'd practiced a dozen times. What I said before, what I suggested, it was a mistake. I was confused, but I'm not anymore. I want our marriage back. Just us. He looked at me for a long moment, then said, "And Theo?" I lied. That's over. It was never anything. I haven't even spoken to him. Technically true. He hadn't returned my calls. Miles raised an eyebrow. "Interesting," he said. "Because he called me last week." My stomach dropped. "What?" He wanted to apologize. Said you've been texting him nonstop since I left. That you told him I was on board with the three of us being together, but that he needed to convince me directly. My face flushed. "That's not, I didn't, but he cut me off." He showed me the messages, Nora. The silence that followed was deafening. Only the clock ticked. I was desperate. I finally whispered, "I was just trying anything to fix this." "By lying to both of us?" he asked, pushing his plate away. He leaned back. "I actually came here with divorce papers. I was going to ask you to look them over, give you time to get a lawyer." Tears welled up. "Miles, no. But now," he said, standing, "I'm not sure there's any reason to drag this out." I trailed behind him as he packed. "This isn't happening. Not like this. What about our promise?" "No divorce, we swore." "You also promised to forsake all others," he said, zipping up the suitcase. "You broke that first." "I didn't cheat." I cried. "You cheated in your heart. You lied, manipulated, changed the rules without asking me. And now, even when caught, you're still lying." He walked to the door. Panic rose in my throat. You can't just throw away 8 years. You can't just stop loving someone. He paused, hand on the doorknob. "That's just it. I didn't stop loving you. You stopped loving just me." And then he was gone. That night, angry and heartbroken, I did something petty and shameful. I posted a vague, self-pitying status on Facebook. Something about people revealing their true colors. I even tagged him. Within an hour, I'd lost 20 friends. By morning, Miles had blocked me. Most of our mutuals had unfriended me or restricted what I could see. I had become the villain in my own story. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. I didn't fight it. I couldn't bear the thought of dragging everything out in public. To my surprise, Miles was generous. He let me keep the house, though I couldn't afford a loan. I sold it 3 months later and moved into a tiny one-bedroom apartment that echoed with loneliness. Through people we once knew, I heard Miles got promoted and relocated to Florida permanently. Theo, unsurprisingly, vanished. Last I heard, he'd taken a new job out of state. He never reached out again. Not once. Only my sister kept checking in. But even she was losing patience. "You need therapy, Nora," she said during our now short phone calls. "You need to own your part in this." But what was there to own? I'd been honest about what I wanted. Everyone else had left me for it. Wasn't I the one who was abandoned? Then came the holiday party at my new job. I'd been with the company almost a year, slowly rebuilding. Most people didn't know much about my past, and I liked it that way. But the company encouraged bringing partners to events, and that night my boss approached with his wife and another couple. "Nora, have you met our new regional director? He just transferred from a Florida office." I turned, smile fixed on my face, and froze. It was Miles. He stood with his arm around a petite brunette, who looked at him like he was the only man in the world. "We met," Miles said smoothly, not a trace of emotion. "Nice to see you, Nora." The woman smiled warmly and offered her hand. "I'm Ellie." Miles never mentioned knowing anyone from the home office. What a small world. I mumbled something and excused myself, locked myself in a bathroom stall, and tried not to sob too loudly. Miles was now my boss's boss. Miles was remarried. Miles was thriving. And I was still alone, still haunted, still stuck. In the months that followed, I saw him occasionally, always professional, always distant. His wife, universally adored, charmed everyone. They bought a house in the best neighborhood. He got promoted again, which meant I sometimes had to report directly to him. Eventually, I couldn't take it. I applied for a transfer to Seattle, across the country. Miles approved it immediately. His final email read, "Request granted. Best wishes for your future endeavors. Packing up my apartment for the second time in 2 years. I found our old wedding album at the bottom of a box I'd never opened. The woman smiling back at me in white looked like a stranger. So sure of herself. So unaware of the damage she would one day cause. A text buzzed from my sister. Call me when you're settled in Seattle. Maybe a fresh start is exactly what you need. A fresh start. As if moving cities could undo the mess I'd made. As if Miles hadn't already shown me what a real fresh start looked like. Full of growth, healing, and genuine happiness. The truth I couldn't say out loud, even now, was this. I had everything I needed once, and I threw it away. I chased a fantasy. I burned down something good, thinking there'd be something better in ashes. Miles moved on. Theo never really wanted me. And I was left behind, alone in a city of strangers, carrying the full weight of what I'd done. Sometimes, late at night, I still wonder, what if I hadn't asked that question? What if I'd seen the worth of what I had before I destroyed it? But those questions, like the past I can't undo, don't change anything. Not anymore.